Innovation process steps. These are the steps that we're going to look at that an innovation would follow as it develops its way through an organization from start to finish. Now, here are the generic steps that we've actually identified earlier, and this just gives you a feel for the range of each of these steps. We've identified 11 steps here. These are, again, generic steps. Sometimes not all these steps will happen in every innovation, but most of them are likely to happen. And this is a good way to think about how an innovation happens. And so what we're going to do is look at each one of these steps and look inside of it and to see how each of the steps actually occurs and what goes on in each of these steps. So let's start with scanning. That's the first step that typically happens in an innovation. This is where an organization observes market trends, observes everything that's going on in its external environment. User needs, competitor practices, changes in the state of the art of technology. All of these things are ways in which organizations look at what's going on in their external environment. And they see data, and they collect data, they do environmental scanning, and this is a function that for most large organizations happens as a standard practice as part of their strategic planning process. The next step that happens is what we would call recognition. This is where you take the scanning data and you recognize the relationship. You connect the dots between problems and opportunities and potential targets for innovation change. And you recognize the relationship of what those pieces of data are to your company's mission. Obviously, some companies will have much better response to certain type of data than other type of data. And so you want to scan and get data that is relevant to your organizational mission. The next step in the innovation process is what we call ideation. Ideation is kind of invention. It's the translation or the shaping of an idea from a problem or a need into an innovation opportunity. So it's recognizing data, recognizing an opportunity, and then translating it into an innovative idea. And so formulating the idea into a value proposition is part of what happens here. So an idea is one thing. An idea that has value is really what is the core part of an innovation. From that stage, the ideation stage, we go to concept development. Concept development is where you take the idea a step further and you develop it into an operational description. And you expand that idea by explaining how it will work in reality. And so that's a narrative sometimes, and usually a description, an operational description of how it actually works. From concept development, we go to prototyping. Prototyping is where there is an attempt to build some kind of a physical or virtual model of how the innovation will work, to understand how it might work, how it would work in reality. And in this stage, you develop product specifications or service specification. You lay out the details of how that innovation will actually work. From that stage, prototyping, you move on to what we call testing and evaluation. This is where you expose the innovation to potential users. Sometimes those users are internal to an organization. They can be in a laboratory. Sometimes they're external. They're out in the marketplace. And you get suggestions for improvement. This is where lead user processes actually work. You can go out and you can get an idea that nobody has seen before, and you can test it in the marketplace and get feedback. And so that testing and evaluation is the process that goes on at this stage. And you evaluate its likely acceptance in the marketplace or within the organization if it's an internal process innovation. From that point, you move on to production. If you've successfully moved to the idea that this is a worthwhile innovation, then you make a commitment to produce it. And you organize labor, equipment, tools, resources to actually support the production of the innovation. And sometimes, like any production process, you might consider options for outsourcing selected parts or selected processes, and then bringing them back into the organization, depending on whether you've got the expertise to actually execute that part of the production process. From that point of production, you are ready to have your product or your service move out into the marketplace. And you identify target markets for placing the innovative idea, and you determine application areas within the organization if it's a process innovation. So where it works best, who are the first users of the market idea, who are the first adopters of the market idea, and so that's what you want to do in that process. That's a marketing effort and a selling effort. Then we move to innovation, adoption, and diffusion. And here we see our familiar adoption curves. The dark blue curve, the bell curve, is the indication of which users adopt over which period of time. That the bottom line is your timeline, and the vertical line is the amount of adoption that happens. And the S curve, the light blue curve, is an indication of the amount of adoption that actually happens. So you can see at the end of the curve, 100% adoption happens. So sometimes you don't ever reach that stage, because sometimes you have, as we see on that bell curve, sometimes you have laggers or late majority who are never going to adopt in some reasonable period of time. But what you want to do in this process step is determine the level of early acceptance and identify who it is that are those users or customers that can actually quickly adopt your product or your service. And then you want to project the longer-term pace of adoption. It's unlikely that you're ever going to get 100% adoption of any product, and so you want to plan ahead and think about what it is that you're going to get for the most adoption in a reasonable period of time. From that stage, once you are looking at innovation, adoption, and diffusion, you think about, all right, your product or your service is out in the marketplace. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to monitor its level of use, monitor how quickly it's being used and how quickly it's being adopted, and you want to provide assistance to ensure that the innovation is accepted. And so you're supporting users and customers of that innovation. And you're getting feedback, and you're getting information and data about how well it's working, and you can identify need for improvements. That is the stage at which we go from version 1.1 to 1.2 to 1.3 and so forth. And so that's the activity that happens in this stage of the process. And finally, we get to recreation. And recreation is where the innovation gets reconsidered for not only improvement, but maybe complete refinement. And maybe the innovation is becoming obsolete. It may be becoming obsolete because it's being displaced by a competitor's innovation. And so you need to look at what's happening in the marketplace and determine when you need to make a change in your offering, your innovative offering. So, in summary, these are the generic steps, 11 generic steps in the innovation process. They help frame the way that managers, if you're managing an innovation process in a big organization, or if you're an entrepreneur who's developing an innovation that you're trying to place in the marketplace, ways in which you can understand and orchestrate the development of your new innovation.